We've spoken a lot about incentives in Destiny 2. Minimal incentives to do certain activities. We know the problems. The strike playlist is desolate, despite the fact that some of the best strikes that have ever been made are in Destiny 2, in my opinion. People are collecting tokens at record rates with nothing to spend them on. 6,000 strange coins later in Destiny 1, I had nothing to show for it other than my rank going up. No unique emblem, nothing. Ranks don't even exist anymore. We've regressed that much with regards to incentive. Something like the raid emblem doesn't even track how many raids you've done or how many times you've killed Callus. And there's not even a raid sparrow or a raid ship. And with the hot button gaming issue being microtransactions lately, thanks in part to Battlefront 2's launch controversy, I figure it's a good time to do a video that I never got around to doing. Incentives. Reasons to play. Having my time respected. Always progressing towards a goal. These are the things that I'm looking for in Destiny, or in larger part, a long-term investment game. And to me, one of the, if not the biggest reason as to why we have minimal incentives is due to the Eververse store. I'm sure this doesn't come as a surprise to most people. The big drama surrounding the Eververse store originally was the fact that you could get rare, blue quality mods from bright engrams. And then, the whole shader thing, which we will talk about. I think at this point, we've come to learn that rare mods coming from bright engrams basically has close to zero gameplay impact whatsoever. It might technically be a pay-to-win element, but considering how much you're showered in mods all the time, and the main glimmer burn consists of buying mods, I think the fuss over rare mods has pretty much gone away. 20 shaders, 30 ships, 27 sparrows, 25 ghost shells. None of these things are earnable outside of bright engrams, and yet in Destiny 1, most if not all of these things came from activities, although only a handful were truly sought after. I'm not going to pretend that everything was amazing. Now, I don't have any sort of issue with cosmetic microtransactions as a whole in gaming for the most part. They're optional. Fine, they make you look cool, whatever. My issue is, in Destiny 2 specifically, that it feels like most cool or unique looking cosmetics in the game that could have potentially been a reward for doing things in the endgame have been thrown into the Eververse store. The endgame, right now, is waiting to fill up that XP bar to see what potentially cool item you can get from the Eververse. That's the only time I can get excited for items now, although to be fair, when you already have all of the raid armor or the trials armor or whatever weapons you want, that kind of makes sense. But these are all things that could have been used to incentivize doing other activities. There's no raid ship, there's no raid sparrow, guess where those things probably are. But if you think about it, this trend isn't really any different from the main game. Do anything and increase your power level. This is literally the same thing. Do anything and get rewarded. And there are some merits to that method, but not to people who are looking for something more. That statement, by the way, is not me defending this practice. And now with the news that there is potentially an in-game either bug, issue, or actual deceptive tactic with gaining XP, in which the game allegedly slows down experience gains for you if you gain too much experience too quickly, that makes it feel even worse. I say allegedly because I have not done any of my own research onto it just yet, but quite a few other people have. I've linked a couple of posts from Reddit in the description. Bungie has yet to comment on this particular topic, as far as I know. We have people with hundreds of pieces of currency, Vanguard, Crucible, raid tokens, gunsmith parts, legendary shards, with nothing to spend them on. And this is going to sound like a really stupid question, but what is the harm of placing some of these Eververse store items in the game at really high prices? The obvious answer is to make money. If you hide this stuff behind a paywall, that makes you money. And an RNG paywall is even more money. And I will say that at least there's bright dust with a small selection of stuff to buy each week. Sure as hell better than nothing. Not to mention you get rewarded with bright engrams every time you do level up. There are free ways to get those items. That is where the good ends though. I seem to remember a quote specifically about shaders saying that Bungie wanted to incentivize people to grind activities to get said shaders. You want more raid shaders? You go do the raid. Makes sense. Well, I want the cool-looking, legendary Eververse Vanguard shaders. How about you let me grind the Strike playlist a little bit and buy a legendary Vanguard shader for X amount of tokens per shader? How about selling the legendary Weapon Foundry shaders at the gunsmith for, let's say, 100 gunsmith parts for one shader or something like that? Something I'd like to see as well is the option to actually use all of these raid tokens that I get. How about being able to buy raid shaders with my tokens? Or even allowing me to buy prestige packages for 40 or 50 tokens if I have the prestige aura equipped. I realize that this shader adjustment alone isn't really going to do a whole lot to incentivize running activities as a whole, nor would it be enough to get old players to return to the game, but it's something small that I wouldn't mind seeing thrown into the game at some point as a part of a larger push to incentivize the game. I imagine as time goes on and players keep playing, something like shaders will be negligible as a reward since people will have so many, something I think Bungie banked on happening to negate some of that initial outrage. Having some way of dumping tokens into unique collectible items would be cool, but again, I don't know if that does a whole lot for people in terms of incentive. It's more of a short-term solution, a smaller solution, but I just wanted to acknowledge the whole shader situation because I've seen a lot of other people talk about it. Now look, I get that businesses got a business, right? The price of a video game hasn't gone up in years, but people are trying to build bigger and bigger gaming experiences. Bungie probably massively expanded since launching Destiny in order to try to keep up with player demand. You gotta pay these people somehow, right? So yeah, I get the whole plight of the developer and the publisher trying to monetize. Not that every business practice is for the benefit of keeping your development studios happy. Let's not pretend that every microtransaction is pure in intentions. But I can be sympathetic towards that issue and also be not sympathetic as an actual player because the average person only cares for one thing. How good is my gaming experience playing this game? As a person, I am sympathetic to the monetization problem. As a player, it really sucks seeing all of the coolest items in the game hidden behind a paywall or an RNG loot box when some of those things used to be earned in-game. If we're going to talk about microtransactions in Destiny versus other games, then I think Destiny at this point is pretty tame. We walked that pay-to-win line a couple of times. Everything we thought might have been pay-to-win didn't end up being pay-to-win, so that's good. The thing that feels so bad about Destiny Micros, though, again, is that we have an incentive problem in the game, and a lot of the things that could maybe be used as incentives are instead sold in a store. That is the main point I want to get across in this video. I mentioned this in the podcast that I did with Slayer Age, but I honestly thought that cosmetic rewards for endgame activities was the way to go. It was something that I was preaching for at least a year. Bungie doesn't want prestige mode activities giving the highest level loot anymore, so the only way to really reward people for doing that kind of stuff is through cosmetic rewards, purely cosmetic. Prestige mode for the raid comes out. The raid armor is the same, but it has a purple glow on it, and for some people that's enough to at least grind out a full set. For other people, that's not a good reason at all. I imagine a good chunk of people only really care about being max power. I think if there was another full set of gear for Prestige, or it had raid bonuses on it, like we've had in past raids, especially considering that we'll be in the Leviathan for the next year in some form, then maybe people would want to run it more. But if you could become a higher power level, people would maybe be a little bit more incentivized to run it. Although, that still doesn't solve the problem of max power not having a lot of meaning because of a variety of things that I've already said 100 times over. I also think a big incentive is the ability to show off your accomplishments. And while stat tracking emblems can do that to an extent, you go watch Real Crafty do trials with his emblem at over 500 wins, you're going to be impressed. The biggest way of showing off in Destiny right now, from a visual perspective, is to have a cool shader set equipped. The way I show off right now is by having a fully monochromatic armor set on my Warlock, although some might argue that the purple glow of the Prestige armor is a little show-offy as well. which, you know, it is. Honestly, I think one of the biggest problems with incentives is that if you're an active player or an avid player, the game simply just moves you too quickly through the power rankings, especially if you're leveling efficiently. If you want to look at other MMO-like, investment-like games, they move a little bit slower. They take a little more time to max out. But I don't know if intentionally slowing down the power leveling process in Destiny would really do much for the game. At least if they just did that, just slowed down the power leveling process. It would take a much more significant revamp to adjust for the slower rates of gear or powering up, and considering how much loot is dumped on you now, I don't think people would take kindly to lower drop rates or power gains. People complain right now about the raid not dropping an item every single time and how lame it is to get tokens, so imagine that slowed down even further. Yeah, maybe not too good. So I ask you, YouTube viewer, what's it gonna take to incentivize you? What will it take to keep you playing? Let me know. If you enjoyed this video, a positive rating is always appreciated. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.